The Horse and the Magician. In the quiet town of Riverside, where cobbled streets wound through markets filled with the scent of fresh bread and spices, an old magician named Elias lived in a towering house at the edge of the forest. He was no ordinary magician. His powers were whispered about in hushed voices, and some claimed he could bend time itself. One evening, as Elias wandered the outskirts of the village, he heard a desperate whinny from deep within the woods. Pushing through the thick foliage, he found a magnificent black horse, tangled in vines. The horse's eyes were filled with both fear and wisdom, unlike any ordinary beast. Elias carefully freed it, murmuring soft spells under his breath. The moment the last vine fell away, the horse stood tall, shaking its mane. It bowed its head slightly, as if in gratitude. Elias sensed something strange about the animal. "You are no ordinary horse, are you?" he asked. The horse snorted and, to Elias's astonishment, spoke in a deep, steady voice. "I was once a prince, cursed by a jealous sorcerer. Only an act of true kindness could set me free." Elias, though a magician himself, knew the weight of curses. He placed a hand on the horse's forehead and whispered an incantation. The air shimmered, and in a flash of golden light, the horse transformed into a tall, regal man with dark, flowing hair and piercing green eyes. "Thank you," the prince said. "For years, I have wandered these lands, waiting for someone with a pure heart to help me." Elias simply smiled. "True magic," he said, "is not in spells, but in kindness." The prince, now free, vowed to never forget Elias's generosity. He returned to his kingdom, and the legend of the kind-hearted magician and the cursed prince-turned-horse was told for generations. And so, in Riverside, the tale lived on. That magic, when used for good, could break even the deepest of curses. Years passed, and the story of Elias and the transformed prince became a cherished legend in Riverside. But there was one more chapter left to unfold in the tale. One crisp autumn day, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew cool, a messenger arrived at Elias's door. The man was breathless, carrying a royal seal. "Master Elias," he said, bowing deeply, "the prince requests your presence at the castle. His kingdom is under threat, and only you can help." Elias, though old, had never feared challenges. His heart still burned with the same kindness and courage that had freed the horse years ago. He agreed to meet the prince, and they set off together toward the grand castle nestled between the mountains. As they journeyed, the prince, now known as Prince Alaron, spoke of the growing darkness in his land. An evil sorcerer, much like the one who had cursed him, had taken over the neighboring kingdom. The sorcerer's magic was dark and cruel, spreading fear and misery wherever it touched. "The kingdom is at its breaking point," Alaron said, "but I cannot defeat this sorcerer alone. You were the one who freed me, Elias. I believe you can help me end this once and for all." When they arrived at the castle, Elias could see the toll the years had taken on Alaron. His eyes, once filled with youthful hope, were now burdened with the weight of leadership. Yet Elias noticed that despite the looming threat, there was still a spark of hope in him, the same hope that had once led him to seek help from a stranger in the woods. Together, they devised a plan to confront the sorcerer. Elias would use his magic to shield Alaron as he ventured into the sorcerer's lair, where a final battle awaited. The magician knew that his powers alone would not be enough to defeat the sorcerer, but with Alaron's courage and the magic of their bond, they had a chance. On the night of the battle, the sky above the castle was filled with swirling clouds, as though the very heavens were watching. Alaron, now donning the royal armor he had once worn as a prince, faced the sorcerer with a sword in hand. Elias stood behind him, his hands raised high, weaving a spell of protection. The sorcerer, with his black robes billowing in the wind, laughed as he saw the two standing before him. "You think you can defeat me? I've ruled this land with fear for centuries. You, a prince and an old magician, are no match for me." But Elias's voice was calm, steady. "It is fear that gives you power, sorcerer, and it is kindness, courage, and love that will defeat you." With a mighty roar, the sorcerer sent forth a wave of dark magic, but Elias's spell formed a shimmering barrier around Alaron. The prince, empowered by the love and faith Elias had shown him, charged forward, his sword gleaming with light. The sorcerer's dark magic collided with Alaron's blade, but instead of shattering, the light from the sword began to dissolve the darkness. With each strike, the sorcerer's hold on the land weakened, and soon his power crumbled away entirely. In the end, the sorcerer vanished in a burst of shadow, leaving only silence behind. As dawn broke, the kingdom was free once more. Alaron turned to Elias, his face filled with gratitude. "You've given me more than my freedom, Elias. You've given me hope. This kingdom is safe because of you." Elias smiled, the same warmth in his eyes as when he had first helped the horse. "The true magic, Alaron, is not in defeating darkness, but in showing others the light within themselves." And so, peace returned to the kingdom. Prince Alaron ruled with wisdom and compassion, always remembering the lesson Elias had taught him. The magician, content with the knowledge that his work was done, returned to his quiet life, knowing that sometimes the greatest magic is simply a kind heart and a willingness to help others. The legend of the horse, the magician, and the prince lived on, inspiring generations to come. As the years passed, Elias continued to live in the same humble house at the edge of the forest. His magic no longer sought by many, yet always quietly available to those who truly needed it. He often visited Alaron's kingdom, where he was revered not just as a powerful magician, but as a father figure who had helped shape the future of the realm. Prince Alaron, now king, had married a noblewoman from a neighboring kingdom, and together they had a son, Prince Aemon. As young Aemon grew, he often heard the stories of the great magician who had helped his father and saved the kingdom from a terrible curse. The tales fascinated him, and he longed to meet the man who had made such an impact on his family's legacy. One autumn day, much like the one when Elias had first found the horse in the forest, young Aemon ventured into the woods, hoping to find the legendary magician. His heart raced with excitement as he followed the winding paths deeper into the trees, the sounds of the forest growing louder around him. At last, after a long journey, Aemon stumbled upon the same house Elias had once lived in. The old building, though weathered by time, still stood strong and sturdy. The door creaked open, and there stood Elias, his face as kind and wise as ever, though his hair had turned completely white. "You must be Prince Aemon," Elias said with a gentle smile. "I've heard much about you." Aemon, amazed that Elias knew who he was, bowed deeply. "I've come to learn from you, Master Elias. I want to understand the true magic that saved my father, the magic of kindness and wisdom." Elias chuckled softly, inviting Aemon inside. "Magic, young prince, is not something that can be learned from spells or incantations alone. It comes from within, from the choices we make, the kindness we show, and the love we give." Aemon listened attentively as Elias spoke of his experiences, of how he had freed the horse and changed the course of a kingdom's future. The prince learned that real magic wasn't about powerful spells, it was about the courage to do what was right, the strength to choose love over fear, and the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. As days passed, Elias taught the young prince more than just magic. He taught him the importance of understanding others, of listening with an open heart, and of leading with humility. Aemon, once a curious and eager boy, began to mature into a wise and thoughtful young man. However, not all was peaceful in the land. Whispers of unrest began to spread throughout the kingdom. A new threat emerged from the shadows, a force more cunning and deceitful than any Elias or Alaron had ever faced before. This time, the enemy was not a sorcerer or dark magic, but a dangerous alliance of rebels who sought to overthrow the royal family. King Alaron, now faced with the rise of the rebels, knew that the time had come for his son to step into the role of leadership. He called Aemon to his side, and together they sought counsel from Elias. The wise magician listened quietly to the plans laid out before him. "This is no ordinary rebellion," Elias said thoughtfully. "It's born from distrust, from a feeling of being unheard. The true challenge is not defeating your enemies, it is finding a way to bring them back to the light." Aemon, now deeply understanding the value of compassion, proposed a different approach than the one his father had suggested. "We will meet with the rebels, listen to their grievances, and seek a way to mend the rift between them and the kingdom." Elias nodded, proud of the young prince's wisdom. "Remember, Aemon, true power lies not in the sword, but in the strength of your heart." And so, instead of waging war, Aemon and his father met with the leaders of the rebellion, extending a hand of peace. Through many long discussions, misunderstandings were cleared, and alliances were formed. The kingdom once again avoided the bloodshed of war, and peace was restored. In time, Aemon ascended to the throne as the new king. His reign was marked by fairness, wisdom, and compassion, qualities that had been taught to him by the magician Elias, who had long since passed into legend. The story of the horse, the magician, and the prince continued to be told throughout the land. It became a story not just of magic, but of the power of kindness, understanding, and leadership rooted in love. The legacy of Elias lived on, inspiring generations to believe that even in a world full of challenges, there was always a way to find light. And as for the prince-turned-king, Aemon ruled with the same unwavering belief that the greatest magic in the world was the ability to make the world a better place through selfless acts of kindness and the courage to stand for what was right. And so, the tale of the horse and the magician came full circle, reminding all who heard it that true magic was not found in the power of spells, but in the goodness and love within the heart.